It's that time of week again for our Truth in Politics panel. On Monday, the Special Interlocutor for Missing Children in Unmarked Graves, Kimberly Murray, released her final report. She put forth 42 obligations on the churches and federal government, such as funding for searches and criminalizing residential school denialism. Jennifer Lewitz is with Pasquale Harbor Strategies, and Negon Sinclair is with the Winnipeg Free Press. They join us now from Saskatoon and Pembroke. Negon and Jennifer, thank you for chatting with us again. My first question is for Negon. The Special Interlocutor, Kimberly Murray, says the disappearance or deaths of so many children was deliberate. What do you make of that statement?
Well, it's about time. It's about time that we hold to account governments that acted inappropriately. But at the same time, it's also going to be very difficult to carry forward many of these charges to places like the International Criminal Court. So, but we have to use the language appropriately for what happened to children who were forcibly taken from their homes, mistreated, and then treated with utter, at the minimum, neglect, never mind the series of incidents involving violence. And so we have to use that language, and it's an important step in a direction of reconciliation.
Jennifer, we have thousands of suspected graves right across Canada. Do you think they should ever be exhumed?
I think that's a really tough question to ask, because I think it is really dependent on the nation that undergoes that work. We saw that a child's jaw had been found over a year ago at a nation in Saskatchewan, and some of the conversation around that was the elders and knowledge keepers saying to leave the bodies potentially where they are. And I think that's a really important conversation to have when we're discussing this, because people say, well, I want to just exhume the bodies so that we can actually see them. And number one, if you say stuff like that, that in itself speaks volumes on the type of person that you are. But also it just disregards entirely our teachings and protocols around how we deal with death. And I think from this moment on, how we deal with this is restoring the power back to our people and to our nations to do what they feel is necessary moving forward.
Negon, residential school denialism hasn't slowed down, and it's especially pursuant to the suspected graves. Do you think that should be in the Criminal Code of Canada?
I think it's a slippery slope, admittedly. I think that anyone who denies basic facts and truth are of serious problems, not just to Indigenous peoples or survivors, but actually to Canadians. The problem ultimately is that when lies are perpetrated to Canadians about what the facts of residential schools, and the fact is that these were not good systems, these were not healthy systems, these were not systems that were intended for the good of children, no matter how many people say it was for the intentions of good. It was never intended to be good for the forcible removal of children from their parents alone. So when we continue to be debating the basic merits of truth, then what we are stuck in is really no movement when we come to the side of reconciliation. We're constantly trying to debate what is really a basic fundamental understanding of residential schools themselves. And that has been well-traveled, well-researched, well-talked about by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which should be simply enough. And so if people want to deny the basic facts, then they should be held to account. And in some cases, if they spread lies, then they should be held to account. But I also think that calling it a criminal code offense might be taking it to a point in which it's going to be very complicated to decide who should go and who should not go to prison.
Jennifer, how is all of this going to help residential school survivors, especially the families of the kids who never made it home? Do you think maybe they should be compensated over and above previous compensation packages?
It's really hard to say. When we talk about residential school denialism, we have to look at the impact that has on people. And I think it's really hard for us to move forward as a country and to move forward as a society when we're still, like Negon said, debating or negotiating what are known as facts now. And I think that it's going to be difficult to advance reconciliation when there's people still negotiating the atrocities and the history that Canada has with First Nations people. So I think that that's something we're going to have to continue looking at, and the impacts that has. I think about the survivors all of the time, and people say, well, why are we giving more settlements? Why are we giving more settlements? But at the end of the day, that's really Canada's only way to quickly get some type of monetary apology over the line, because in every other case, everything is slow moving. The Truth and Reconciliation calls to action, everything else seems to be at a standstill. And I think at the bare minimum, the settlements are something that helps. But I think we need to look at the broader picture of how we're going to fix this and advance reconciliation and break down the systemic barriers for Indigenous people and the stereotypes and everything that exists for our future generations.
Jennifer and Niigaan, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks.
Great. Thanks.